Hey, what's up? This is Nick with Rider Magazine. Today I'm out here in Folsom, California, and we just got done riding the brand new 2021 KLX300. Now, as you guys know, this is Kawasaki's latest dual sport motorcycle, and it really appeals to, well, a bit of everyone. It's an entry-level motorcycle, as well as a motorcycle that's capable of pleasing more experienced riders. Now, if you think back into Kawasaki's dual sport lineup, we have the iconic KLX300. It served many riders for many years. It was updated in 2018 and received fuel injection, and now the KLX line, or the entry-level line, is bumped up to 300 cc's. So when we think about the new bike here, the KLX300, really we're looking at essentially an updated KLX250, because it does share the same core components in terms of its chassis, its suspension, styling, wheel sizes, etc., etc. What is new is the 292 cc fuel-injected engine, and that is derived from the 300R trail bike, which is not street legal, unlike this thing right here. Actually, not just one thing, two things. Now, so what do you get for $5,599, and with the camo version, $5,799? A very competent bike. Now, we spent a full day riding some dual sport. We rode some canyons. We went to an OHV park. We rode some trails and had a blast. So what makes it a blast? Well, this new engine has a good amount of torque on the bottom end, which is really going to appeal to a lot of less experienced riders. You're always going to have power on tap, has some good mid-range power as well. That's going to help you do your light commuting. Say if you're a student, this is your first vehicle, you're riding to school, and those that are looking to get out there and have some fun on the trails. You know, you're going to be able to use that power, hop over a log, or, do a little hill climb, and it's all right there. It's very smooth, very tractable, very user-friendly. Coupled with that, you have fuel injection that is very crisp, clean, and precise. There's no hiccups, no sharpness. It is very user-friendly. Again, that is the common theme that you're going to experience with the KLX300. Now, the other cool thing about the KLX300 is its chassis. So, a guy like me, my size, I'm at 190 pounds, or maybe 180, 170. It is sprung very light, but damped very well. So someone of my size, it's going to feel a little bit squishy, which is going to make that 35.2 inch seat height very accessible. Again, dual sport bikes, dirt bikes tend to be a little bit taller, and that's okay, because I can still plant my feet on the ground, and I have a 32 inch inseam, because the whole thing kind of sags down a little bit. That said, you have 10 inches of travel in the front, 9 and change in the rear, and you're doing okay. In terms of adjustability with the suspension, you do have a fully adjustable shock, and that's really cool for an entry-level bike like this. But again, going back to the performance of it, when you're on the trails, it soaks up things very well. It can go through whoops, and the reality is, we rode it to a level that most users may not have pushed it to, and I think a lot of new riders are really going to enjoy that. Now, some of the other things I don't want to touch on are the ergonomics. It's very an upright riding position, plenty of room in the cockpit, and it's a full-size motorcycle. When you look at it, it's a 56-inch wheelbase, so it feels light and nimble, and it is. It handles well, it steers in very easily, and it's very stable off-road. So when you're at high speeds, you're on those fire roads, and you're going through some, varying terrain, it's a very planted and confidence-inspiring machine. And then you tie that to the fact that the performance level is something that's very accessible. Now, kind of the last thing I want to touch on is the steel frame. Again, that's carryover from the 250 or the KLX250. And, this bike just handles, overall, it's just a very competent motorcycle. Of course, you have the brakes, which do the job as they should. I would prefer a little bit more feel in the lever, but they have some nice bite. They get the job done, and we're good to go. So we're going to actually ride the KLX300 Supermoto tomorrow. We're going to finish up this part of the review after we hit the streets and a kart racing track, and we're going to have a good time. So let me change my gear. Okay, so this is day 2 of a ride on the KLX300 Dual Sport, and behind me we have the KLX300SM, which is Kawasaki's new supermoto. It's a really important bike to this lineup, and we've, spent a day riding it on the streets around Prairie City, and then we came to the kart track to have some fun. So the main differences you're going to see in the 300SM versus the Dual Sport is, of course, smaller 17-inch wheels, street tires, and then they've also updated the suspension, so it feels a bit stiffer. And, with that, it changes the personality of the bike completely. You're going from large off-road oriented wheels that kind of subdue the handling a little bit, and then with these smaller wheels, it just perks everything up and makes it a very light, throwable, you can just chuck the bike around and have fun. And it just makes it a very light and throwable package. And really, the wet weight of this bike is around 302, if I remember the spec sheet correctly. And the other cool thing that they've done with lowering the bike overall through, going to the smaller wheels and also adjusting the suspension is it's also lowered the seat height. So it's become a more accessible machine. Like I said earlier, with the Dual Sport bike, it's sprung very soft. This thing is a little bit stiffer to make it much more balanced and poised when you're in a situation like this and riding aggressively. But now we're at a seat height that's shy or just north of 33 inches or so, but it's an extremely narrow bike. So again, I stand at 5 foot 10 inches, 32-inch inseam. I can get my boots on the ground all day long, and I'm A-okay. So I'm implying that shorter riders should have an easier time getting their boots on the deck, and that's really important for entry-level riders that might be picking this up at $6,000. It's a great price. And if you think about comparable bikes, you're going to be looking at stuff like the IRC 400SM, which is priced around $7,499 versus this guy. And this thing is also lighter, and it's fuel injected. So big advantages there. Now let's talk about performance and going back to the engine. Now you do have that 292cc engine that I mentioned earlier in the video. That's sourced from the 300R trail bike, and it's just a great little motor. It can get up to speeds of 80 plus miles an hour comfortably. It's not, you're not feeling like you're wringing its neck or anything like that. It has some good torque, has some good mid-range power, and especially in these situations. But the important thing, like I said earlier, it's user-friendly. So you're not going to get into situations where you're just going to, high-side yourself to the moon, shake hands with some aliens and whatnot, like you might do on a really hopped-up, true supermoto machine like the KTM 450 SMR or something like that, which again, while an awesome bike, is significantly more expensive and hyper-focused in the sense that it's not street legal. But that said, this is going to be great for entry-level riders. They're going to be able to learn clutch control and things like that and ride in a safe environment on kart tracks. Ride here, have lunch, spin some laps, go home, go to school, do their thing, and it's going to be all good. And I think that's great. Now, the other things that I want to touch on, before we get going is, the gearbox. It's a very light shift, light throw, easy to use, easy to manipulate, light clutch. I would like a little bit more positivity in the engagement, but that's something that they can improve upon in the future. And then one of the other changes that they did for the supermoto specifically is beef up that front rotor, because you're going to be using it on the street. So that is now a 300 rotor. Again, like the Dual Sport, kind of the same comments there. I just like a little bit more feedback. Now, if we talk about road use specifically, gear ratios or final drive gear ratios on this have gone to, they've basically given it a shorter rear sprocket, or smaller rear sprocket rather, and you're able to just, it's more street friendly. Overall, I think the 2021 Kawasaki KLX300SM is a great package and a great value. And whether you're an entry-level rider, novice, beginner, intermediate, expert, you can have a lot of fun on this thing, especially at a kart track like this and out in the street in the canyons. So anyway, this is Nick with Rider Magazine. If you guys have any questions about the 2021 Kawasaki KLX300 Dual Sport or the KLX300SM, go ahead and drop them down below and we'll get you some answers. And the last thing I want to remind you guys is go ahead and be safe out there. So take care.